You know, we often think of high intelligence as this golden ticket, right? A free pass to a life of success and ease. But what if that's not really the whole story? In this explainer, we're going to dive into the hidden challenges that can come with a brilliant mind, and more importantly, what the science tells us we can actually do about it.
Okay, so when I say the word genius, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Seriously, is it, someone just acing every single test without even cracking a book? Someone who just kind of floats through life, totally immune to all the stress and frustration that hits the rest of us? Yeah, that's a pretty common picture. But as we're about to see, it's not the real picture. Not even close. So yeah, that stereotype, it's all about effortless achievement. But the research, and more importantly, the actual lived experiences of really smart people, they tell a completely different, way more complicated story. The hard truth is, being exceptionally smart doesn't give you a free pass from life's hardships. And this right here, this just nails that disconnect. It's a quote from a big study done by the Mensa Foundation, and it points to this really painful paradox. You've got this tremendous pressure to achieve, but you're not given the guidance you need to actually do it. So, you see, this isn't a story about effortless success at all. It's a story about unmet needs.
Okay, let's look at the hard data, because this is where it gets really interesting. The Mensa Foundation talked to over 3,400 highly intelligent people. And wow, the results are kind of staggering. A full 75%, that's 3/4 of them, said they had moderate to high levels of unmet needs. And that's across the board: school, career, personal life. So the big takeaway here is, this is not some rare, isolated problem. It's a huge, widespread pattern.
So where do all these struggles even start? Well, a lot of the time, the very first and most intense battlefield is the one inside your own head. This is where a really powerful mind can, ironically, turn on itself and create this relentless inner critic. To really get a handle on this internal battle, we gotta unpack two big ideas that sound similar but are totally different: self-esteem and self-acceptance. Think of self-esteem as conditional. It's like, I feel good about myself because I got an A, or because I got that promotion. It depends on your achievements and how you measure up to other people. Self-acceptance, though, that's unconditional. That's looking in the mirror and saying, you know what, I'm a work in progress, I've got flaws, and that's okay. It's accepting the whole package.
And that's where the inner critic really gets its power. I mean, we all have that little voice, right? But for someone with a really sharp mind, that critic can be razor sharp too. It's that nagging voice of self-doubt, the one that's always whispering about failure. And what's fascinating is that psychology research shows this voice gets its fuel from something called cognitive distortions. These are basically just ingrained negative thought patterns, like making one tiny mistake and immediately thinking, well, I'm a total failure.
And the damage this does, it can be absolutely devastating. Just listen to this person from the study. That feeling of being misunderstood, it's not just that it hurts in the moment. It directly feeds into low self-worth and that classic awful feeling of being a fraud, what we call imposter syndrome. This internal battle has very, very real consequences.
Okay, so how do you even begin to fight back against that? It all starts with actively building self-acceptance. And here are 3 keys to do that. First, you are not your behavior. That means failing at a task doesn't make you a failure. There's a huge difference. Second, people's opinions are not facts. Just because someone criticizes you doesn't mean you have to absorb it and make it your own reality. And third, you have to consciously value your own strengths. Don't just gloss over them. Actually take a moment to acknowledge the things you're good at and proud of.
And this isn't just some fluffy, feel-good advice. Researchers like Michael E. Bernard have shown over and over again that self-acceptance is the literal bedrock of mental health and well-being. It's the foundation. Everything else is built on top of it. All right, so now that we've talked about the internal world, let's zoom out a bit, because beyond that inner critic, there's another huge challenge, and that's the fundamental human need for connection, that deep hunger to feel like we belong.
Man, this quote just cuts right to the bone, doesn't it? For so many highly intelligent people, especially as kids, being different wasn't a good thing. It led straight to feeling isolated, rejected, even getting bullied. The very things that made them exceptional
or the same things that turn them into social outcasts.
And there's this interesting paradox that happens when you're growing up. Teenagers naturally push for what's called emotional autonomy, basically becoming independent from their parents. Now, that's a totally normal and crucial part of growing up. But here's the twist. Research shows that this push for independence can actually make you feel more emotionally vulnerable at first. It can even cause a temporary drop in your well-being, which, ironically, makes having those strong connections outside the family even more important.
And look, the science on this is crystal clear. It doesn't matter which expert model you look at, whether it's Carol Reif's famous model of well-being or the Rafi Park model for resilience. They all say the exact same thing. Meaningful, positive relationships and a solid support network, they are not just nice-to-haves. They are absolutely essential for our mental health and our ability to bounce back from life.
And don't for a second think this is just something that happens to smart kids on the playground. That Rafi Park research, it found that a full 20%, that's 1 out of every 5 managers in the UK, feel like they don't have a strong, reliable network at work. So this hunger for connection, it's a universal thing. It follows us throughout our entire lives.
Okay, so we've laid out the challenges, both internal and external. But just talking about the problems is only half the job, right? So now, let's shift gears and talk about solutions. We're going to look at a practical framework for building the strength to handle all this stuff, a blueprint for resilience.
What I love about this Rafi Park model is how it talks about resilience. It's not some fixed trait, like you're either born with it or you're not. No, it frames it as a dynamic process. It's a set of skills, of capabilities, that literally anyone can learn, practice, and get better at over time. That's super empowering.
So this model is built on 5 key pillars. It starts with your mindset. That's things like having perspective and strong emotional intelligence. Then it moves to your sense of direction, knowing your purpose, your values, your strengths. All of that is held up by your network, those connections we've been talking about. And the whole thing is grounded in taking care of yourself or managing your physical energy. Makes sense, right?
Let's just double-click on perspective for a second. How do you actually build that? Well, one really cool tool comes from something called hope theory. It breaks hope down into 2 simple parts. The first is pathway thinking. That's the how. It's believing you can come up with different ways to get to your goals. The second part is agency thinking. That's the will. It's the motivation, the belief that you can actually use those paths you came up with. So you see, hope isn't just wishing. It's a real, concrete strategy for your brain.
Okay, so that's a bunch of theory, I know. But the really important question is, what do you do with it? How do you actually put this stuff into practice? Where do you start building your own resilience?
All right, here it is, your toolkit, pulling together everything we've talked about. Number 1, find mentors. Remember that Mensa study? This was the single biggest unmet need. 2, affirm your values. Knowing what truly matters to you is like a shield against stress. 3, practice that self-acceptance we talked about to shut down that inner critic. 4, actively build hope. Figure out your how and your will. And finally, number 5, deliberately, intentionally invest in your connections. Build that support network.
So, let's end on this one thought. Maybe our whole definition of smart is just wrong. What if being truly intelligent isn't about knowing all the answers? What if it's not about effortlessly hitting every goal society sets for you? What if, instead, it's about having the courage and the self-awareness to build a life that truly fits you? A life that's authentic, that's meaningful, and that's resilient.